Cowboys of the Old West, those treasured composite American folk heroes, symbols of rugged American individualism and tenacity, raw, two-fisted, gun-toting. They were hard-riding, bronco-busting, whiskey-drinking, tough hombres, courageous tamers of an untamed land, and until very recently they were depicted solely as white men. The truth is that 1 out of every 4 of those purple sage-riding cowboys was a black man. Black cowboys rode all of the major trails, the Shawnee, the Chisholm, the Western, and the Goodnight Lovin'. They drove cattle to railheads. Most were the best riders, ropers, and wranglers the West ever honed. Some were villains. Some were heroes. Yet few Americans are aware of this. The ever-increasing clamor for more information about the countless accomplishments of Black Americans as key movers and shakers who seized, settled, and built this land demands that we don't leave out the cowboys. The period of the cowboy lasted less than 20 years, from 1865 to the mid-1880s. The cowboy did not single-handedly lay claim to shape the West. Alongside these cowboys, the host of folk who lent the vital hand in shaping the American frontier was a multitude of black folk. The Shore family of Nebraska. Stephen Bonga, early settler of Wisconsin. George Washington, founding father of Centralia, Washington. O.T. Jackson, founder of Deerfield, Colorado. Benjamin "Pat" Singleton, who organized the Black Exodus to Kansas. Aunt Clara Brown, an ex-Virginia slave who sponsored many wagon trains to Colorado, all settlers, homesteaders, farmers. Then there were the soldiers and cavalrymen, like the Buffalo Soldiers of the 9th, 10th, 24th, and 25th Cavalry. Stagecoach drivers and Pony Express riders like William Robinson and George Monroe, 2 of California's most famous. Mary Fields, a two-fisted woman that drove the Montana trails. The Mountain Men, fur trappers and traders like James P. Beckworth, known to the Crow Indians as Chief Bloody Arm because of his brave, fierce fighting. George Bonga, Indian language specialist. There were also black businessmen and women, like Colorado's Barney Ford, pioneer and hotel owner. Civil rights activist Henry O. Wagoner, barbershop, restaurant, and hotel owner. Biddy Mason, an ex-Mississippi slave and black 49er who financed schools, churches, and nursing homes. Mary Ellen Pleasant, ex-slave, wealthy landowner, and shrewd businesswoman who used her business establishments to aid and employ escaped slaves. And there were statesmen like William Owen Bush, who served 2 terms in the Washington State Legislature. William Leadersdorf, a huge landowner who introduced the first steamship to California, built San Francisco's first hotel, and served as consul to Mexican California. The legendary Cowboys occupied front and center stage of this colorful, overwhelming Wild West drama, even though the period of the cowboy lasted less than 20 years, from 1865 to the mid-1880s. These cowboys were a mixed lot of humanity: white Civil War veterans, North and South; Native Americans who were expert horsemen fleeing the oppression and slow death of the reservation; Spanish Mexicans whose heritage of handling horses and cattle as vaqueros predated the American range by 400 years; and black men, slaves, ex-slaves, fugitive and freed, ex-Union and Confederate soldiers, all fleeing Northern and Southern bigotry, racism, and bondage. Many arrived in the West already expert riders, ropers, and cattle handlers. These African Americans were the most prepared for the grueling hours, punishing work, and extremes of nature that were the life of the American cowboy. Following their defeat in the Texas Wars, Mexican cattlemen were forced to abandon their herds. The result, in 1845, was 300,000 loose cattle roaming the range. By the end of the Civil War, there were 5 million Texas Longhorns, breeding stock for the Texas cattlemen whose business it was to sell cattle to new ranchers and to the beef-hungry East. The cattlemen needed 3 basic things: vast stretches of land, one steer needed 10 acres of grazing land a year, rivers of water, one steer drank 30 gallons of water a day, and highly skilled cowboys, men to trap and break wild horses, like Bronco Sam of Wyoming, who rode a bucking steer into town, went through a plate glass window and out the other side of the building still mounted. Besides breaking horses, these cowboys also had to round up, fence and feed, castrate, brand, drive, and load cattle. William Moses Dabney, who drove cattle from Texas to Montana, was an Indian fighter, bronco buster, and scout. The Parker brothers, black frontiersmen who owned and worked their Denver, Colorado cattle ranch and employed black and white cowboys to work their spread. The ability to endure extremes was the basis of the cowboy's survival. On the trail, a cowpuncher would work 7 days a week for 18 or more hours a day, travel 1,800 miles over treacherous territory in temperatures as hot as 110 degrees and as cold as 50 degrees below zero. Average salary ranged from $35 to $100 a month. Off the trail, when work was slack, the cowboys entertained themselves by challenging each other to feats of cowhand skill. Sometimes different outfits would compete for a money prize. Nat Love competed in one of the first tournaments on record and was the top winner. Red River Dick, or Deadwood Dick, had no intention of winding up a black unsung hero of the West. So in 1907, he published his own autobiography, The Life and Adventures of Nat Love. Considered the most outstanding bulldogger and showman of all time was Bill Pickett, said to be the greatest sweat and dirt cowhand that ever lived, bar none. When they turned Bill Pickett out, they broke the mold. Pickett is credited for having originated the sport of bulldogging. It wasn't enough for Bill Pickett to bull the steer. He had to go one step further. After twisting the neck of the down steer, Pickett would sink his teeth into the upper lip of the helpless bull. Then he would raise his arms in a show of victory.
Well, I think the heroes of the 1980s for most urban black kids, unfortunately, are what they see around them, which might be a drug pusher or a gang warlord or a pimp or something that we see and construe as negative. There are so many good things that black people have done to help make this country that are unrealized, and what it needs is a mouthpiece.
Contributing to the educational aspect of Oakland's Black Cowboy Parade was the Oakland Museum's exhibit, The Black Cowboy, Then and Now. we can appreciate the varied roles African Americans played in the development of the United States. Today's black cowboys draw from a rich tradition of working with animals and our natural environment. Honoring those historical ties are important to all Americans.